Hey, so I saw Frankenstein this week and had every intention of writing an article about it, but while I was looking at other people's reviews of the movie, I came across Atun-Shei's, and man, sometimes a video just demands to be made. I'm gonna spoil Frankenstein, by the way, you've been warned. Just to begin, I want to make it very clear that I have absolutely nothing against Atun-Shei. I actually really like and respect his work. This is not at all meant to be like a takedown of his channel or what he does or anything like that. This is very simply a disagreement about a movie, okay? It's not a big deal. Andrew, if you happen to come across this, hi, I really like your stuff. I'm not trying to pick a fight, I promise. I just mean this to be a friendly difference in opinion about a movie. It matters a little because movies matter to me, but it doesn't matter that much. So I hope everything I say here is taken in that spirit. That said, what the fuck, man? As you may be picking up, I really liked this movie. Just formally, I think the writing is stronger than some other Del Toro projects. I think all the performances are really solid, especially Oscar Isaac and Jacob Elordi, who were really the ones who needed to be good. I study a lot of movies that require me to look past more basic formal missteps that keep people from seeing what I think are the interesting ideas contained therein. But I don't really think that's necessary here. I think this is like a really solid, good time movie. But I also think it's acting as a pretty intentional signifier of Del Toro's interest as an artist, and what I think is a very correct understanding of what the themes of Frankenstein have to say to a modern audience. Atun-Shei disagrees, bless his heart. He has many issues with this movie, and some I'm not super interested in arguing about. Like, he doesn't like the wolf slander. Fine. I think it's fine to not love Del Toro's reliance on fairy tale tropes. That's a perfectly acceptable difference in aesthetic preference. But his complaint about the wolves does also include an instance of an overall theme in his criticism that I think is a little odd.
You know, I understand that this is kind of a fairy tale, and it's sort of like, you know, and GDT's very into that kind of fairy tale aesthetic, and, you know, the dark woods and the wicked wolves and all that kind of stuff fits in very well with that. But, you know, it is very much situated within this Christian ecological hierarchy of kind of the shepherd, the pastoral lifestyle. The woods are dark and evil. You know, the wolf is a kind of competitor for human ecological dominance, right?
So I don't think portraying wolves as vicious monsters and the woods as dark and scary is like a particularly Christian thing to do. Like, a demand in Christianity to perform this kind of hierarchical relationship to nature definitely exists. I get that, but I just don't think it's the case that every single European culture had a totally friendly relationship with large predators, and then Christians showed up and everyone was like, oh wow, you know, the woods are dark and scary. I just never thought about it that way before. Like, I think it's just a stretch to say that the family in the woods are representative of the primacy of Christianity in this movie in any meaningful way. Christianity is a big problem in this movie for Andrew. So many Andrews in the videos lately. He doesn't like all the Catholic shit here, and I really struggle to find a compelling reason why that should be the case. Like, he frames what he says about it as a justification for Christian imagery being a wrong choice here, but like, it actually isn't, I think.
It's a disconnect that I have with this adaptation, is that it's just oozing with Catholicism. My first thoughts when the credits rolled were, you know, Mary Shelley was a Jacobin vegetarian. James Whale, the director of the Frankenstein films from the 30s, was a gay, atheist, anti-fascist. Neither of them would have been into this Catholic shit.
Yeah, and Guillermo del Toro is an anti-fascist Mexican guy with a complicated relationship with the Catholic traditions he grew up in. So what? Who cares whether Mary Shelley and James Whale would have liked this version of Frankenstein? Who cares? It's not their movie. I don't know, man. I don't think Christian aesthetic signifiers are inappropriate to use here. And I think it's pretty dismissive to say they are for no apparent reason.
In Shelley's world, right, the fact that there is no Christian God makes it scarier, right? There's no metaphysical guardrails to the violation and plundering of nature. You know, humanity is its own agent. You get the sense that sort of Mother Nature in the novel is like not powerful enough to just be like, oh, I'm going to put a stop to this. You know what I mean? Like, just the fact that humanity is able to kind of like do these horrible things and get away with it makes it a much creepier kind of cosmic tale. than just this like boring Christian shit.
Like, I don't like Christianity very much either, but Del Toro is not doing like Christian apologetics here. There is no indication that God exists in this world. That's simply not a part of what's happening in this movie. Christianity exists as a faith people reference, but the function of that is as a representation of the overall themes of metaphysical humility. It is a warning against playing God. So the question, I think, should be, what does it mean to play God in a situation like this? What's that phrase pointing to? Is it the idea that we should scour the Christian Bible for things that tell us it's wrong to reanimate the dead? No, obviously not. Of course not. Whether Christianity is the one true religion has nothing to do with this story. This is a story about the responsibility a creator has to not just go making shit willy-nilly. It's the idea that bringing forth life is a deeply important act that is full of meaning and demands to be taken seriously. That's why the novel is subtitled The Modern Prometheus. You can pick any mythical referent for this. It's a story that exists across all sorts of cultures, including Christian cultures. Del Toro was raised Catholic. That's the metaphysical tradition he's working with, and relying on that for imagery is 1000% an okay thing for him to do, I think. Just because it's not the lens you prefer doesn't make it boring Christian shit. That just strikes me as like kind of a rude and thoughtless thing to say that I don't think helps your argument here. Like, are we really going to pretend that the monster doesn't read Paradise Lost in the book? Is that also boring Christian shit? Aesthetics are at the core of most of the complaints here. Like, Andrew also doesn't like how big the reanimation scene is. He thinks it should be smaller and more intimate like it is in the book.
And while, again, the design was like very beautiful and very pretty and gorgeous to look at, I mean, I think it isn't anything new, right? If I wanted to watch the James Whale movies, which have a lovely crumbling tower and, and that sort of grand kind of sense of scale, then I would watch the James Whale movies. I think it's a real missed opportunity kind of not to go back to the sort of creepy simplicity of the book, right? Sort of like animating this homunculus in your apartment, right? Like by the light of a single guttering candle. It's just such a intimate, weird, creepy image, right? I mean, I sort of see that scene in the book as being kind of more of the vibe of like a 14-year-old masturbating, in the soft glow of his laptop, right? It's just not like this sort of grand, huge, these giant batteries and sparks flying.
So firstly, whether this portrayal is new or not is really of no consequence at all, right? Like what matters is whether the huge scope of that aesthetic is thematically relevant, which it is. I'll talk about that later. The reason Andrew isn't seeing that is because of broader criticism with aesthetic that he seems to have here.
Whatever direction you want to take Frankenstein in, I think it should be very creepy, very, very off-putting. I rewatched First Reformed this week, the incredible Paul Schrader movie, and what I really love about that is that it has this sort of like sinking sense of dread of this idea that we're going through a dying world. And I think that was very much on Shelley's mind when she was writing Frankenstein, right in the midst of The Year Without a Summer, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. I think today with climate change, the big tech, AI, all income inequality, all of this sort of stuff, it's like very much like we're kind of just waiting for the axe to fall. We're kind of just like, oh God, what's going to happen? When's it going to happen? And I didn't feel anything like that in this new Frankenstein. All I felt instead was melodrama.
This is where I've really got a lot to say, so strap in or buckle up or secure yourself however you need to. I suspect that Andrew is not thinking of the aesthetic choices of this movie as much more than set dressing. He recognizes that the sets look really good and that there's things like color theory happening here.
The more red that Mia Goth wore, the more Oscar Isaac was attracted to her, which I thought was like very nice and freaky and Freudian.
But I think it's really important to both understand and accept that what's happening here is absolutely melodrama. This is essential to comprehending what Del Toro is trying to do with this movie. Melodrama, as we use it today, is an extremely gendered term. I need you to stick with me here because I am arriving at a point. I am certain that some idiot is going to arrive in the comments saying, I think Atun-Shei is sexist because he used the term melodrama. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think Atun-Shei is sexist. Jesus. What I'm saying is that melodrama is a term that signifies a story that is only to be taken seriously by people who are frivolous, unserious, undereducated, overly sentimental, that melodrama must only appeal to a certain kind of person, and historically, that person has been women. Melodrama is actually the genre with which Linda Williams anchors her argument in Film Bodies, Gender, Genre, and Excess, which I have referenced a few times on this channel because it really nicely lays out how certain genres have historically come to be associated with the lowbrow masses who are not to be taken seriously. There are many genres that do this, but the lowest ones, according to her, the ones that are considered the least sophisticated and worthy of serious consideration, are porn, horror, and melodrama, all of which just happen to rely on depicting women as being, as Williams says, both the moving and the moved. All these genres assume that the response of the audience will be primarily physical as opposed to intellectual. That's why they're considered low, because at the point in time these genres are being established in mass media, the physical and intellectual are considered mutually exclusive categories. Women, like other marginalized people, the feeble-minded, say, or the lesser races, were, as a holdover of heavily Victorian-influenced sensibilities, considered to be more physical than intellectual beings, and rightfully treated as one might treat a child. That denigration of the physical, the organic, the instinctive, as fundamentally oppositional to intelligence is the reason we use the term melodrama as an insult. So yeah, I don't think that calling what Del Toro is doing here melodrama is an adequate excuse to avoid investigating the aesthetic qualities of this movie further, any more than I think it's ever acceptable criticism to say, well, it's just a horror movie, who cares? I'm saying this because Del Toro has kind of historically been a melodramatist. That's his style. He deals in sentimentality and emotionality, but he's doing so in a way that is trying to make you take emotion seriously. He's kind of trying to elevate the melodrama. I think this movie, out of all his movies, is not only the one that's clearest about this intent, but also probably the one that's most successful because it's carried across the themes of the entire movie. Emotionality as it relates to gender is what this movie is about. What Victor Frankenstein is doing in this movie is trying to bring back his mother. And the reason he's doing that is because he wishes to reestablish the unconditional love he had as a child through her. He's obsessed with his mother. That's why the actor that plays her also kind of looks like Mia Goth. I am so sorry. Do I have eyes? Victor's mother doesn't look like Mia Goth. She is Mia Goth. But in trying to accomplish this, he produces a creature that he considers defective, undesirable, and more than a little embarrassing. It's not just that he thinks his experiment failed, it's that he considers the failure of this experiment, the failure of his creation, to be exactly what he wanted, as a blight on his name and reputation. Precisely the same relationship he had and hated with his own father. For the entire first half of the movie, the monster can only say one word: Victor, the name Victor describes as imposed upon him by his father, and which for that reason became an unbearable source of pressure for him. The monster is trying to give him that name back for the whole movie, to let him accept it as an emblem of his own life instead of somebody else's. And a large part of the story of this version of Frankenstein is the process of Victor Frankenstein finally learning to accept his legacy as it is wrapped up in his name, not through accomplishing the goals of egoist man of science greatness that he created that monster to embody, but in what that name means to the creature itself. We have limited control over our own legacies, especially as they're carried on in children, because children are their own people whose job is not to just replicate your work forever into the future. This is the kind of relationship that certainly in the Victorian era, but across a lot of cultures, has been typically coded female, specifically because of the vulnerability involved. Motherhood, in large swaths of what we refer to as the Western tradition, requires mothers to let go of their children in a way that is not really explicitly required of fathers. The kind of upper class, highly educated father Victor Frankenstein is shown to have in this movie is granted the right, just as a matter of course, to think of his children as extensions of himself. The essence of healthy creation, any form of creation, artistic, scientific, interpersonal, the relationships we create, the children we have, cannot be domineering. When you paint a painting, you've spun something into existence that wasn't there before, but the existence of that painting also makes you a painter. It says something about you. It turns you into something new. Likewise, when you have a child, you're not just you as you've always been with just another accessory appended to your side. You are now a parent. The existence of that child changes the nature of your existence in turn. The things we make are also the things that make us. That's the theme of Frankenstein. I think part of the reason motherhood specifically is often given such mystical significance is because pregnancy and birth physically changes you. The experience makes you qualitatively different from before you had a child. The significance of physically fostering, nurturing, and bringing forth life is an aspect of female physicality that feminist theorists like Simone de Beauvoir and Julia Kristeva have long identified, I think completely correctly, as something misogynist societies, such as upper-class Victorian-era Europe, spend a lot of time denigrating because they fetishize and deeply envy it. Men of the type Del Toro is writing into this movie are obsessed with accomplishing the kind of control over the creation of life that would truly allow them complete creative dominance over women. That's why it's important that the reanimation scene be as huge as it is. It's an outrageously complex and wasteful contraption whose only purpose is to recreate what the female body does naturally. And it can't even do that right. But even if beating women at their own game isn't itself a consideration, men like this want the same power of creation women have without any of the variables or messiness. They want to create people who are engineered down to the last molecule to be exactly what their creators want. And they want to do so without contributing anything of themselves except the parts they like best. Victor wants to both give and receive the same love he gave and received from his mother without any of the responsibility, unpredictability, or physical danger that specifically mothering relationship involves. This core emotional stunting he has is the same thing that ruins his relationship with Elizabeth, and by extension causes the death of his brother. He wants Elizabeth, but she says no. Not because they don't have chemistry, because she doesn't like him, but because she's already made her choice, and she has responsibilities to people other than herself. The reason her opinion of him just continues declining is because this version of Victor Frankenstein that Del Toro has made is incapable of understanding why anybody would do that. He is a guy whose understanding of ethics starts and stops at whether there are adverse consequences for him. Oh no, I set my evil lair on fire and it turns out that hearing my suffering creation scream my name in panic and fear makes me feel bad. Oh no, I tried to save him but I lost my leg. Oh, I suffer. How terrible for me. That's his attitude. Elizabeth is the only one who's in a position to really clock him as a guy who thinks that the entirety of reality is just the Victor show. The reason none of the men can seem to do that is because Victor's position and relationship to the world is aspirational to them instead of pathological, which is what it is. By the end of the movie, his child has derailed his life and destroyed his loved ones because of his abandonment of responsibility. It has also fundamentally altered his body. Victor Frankenstein has given birth. Congratulations! When, in the end, Victor asks the monster to forgive him, forgive himself, and live, he is doing so as a mother. That is a mother's advice. It is the essence of what the mother love we've decided to gender so female says to its children. I'm so sorry I brought you into this world of pain and ruin. Please forgive me. You're going to make mistakes in this life. I'll love you regardless. So please love yourself for my sake. I don't know what this world is going to do to you, but whatever it does, the best thing you can do for yourself is live. which is also the best thing you can do for me. That's fucking beautiful. It's a cool thing to see in a movie and is a really good way to address how contingent gender roles are and how stupid misogyny is in a way that isn't preachy and stupid. And then Victor Frankenstein dies. It is a perfect fulfillment of what Linda Williams identifies as the standard of every emotional beat in a melodrama coming too late. Victor Frankenstein never gets to be the mommy he always wanted to be. Frankenstein is largely a story about motherhood. I know you know this because you just made a feature-length video about the sexual politics of Frankenstein where you make a point of talking about exactly that. I watched the whole thing. It was really good. So I think it's pretty rich to say that nothing that made the original novel interesting made it into this movie.
So I don't think that anything that made the original novel by Mary Shelley interesting made it into this adaptation.
I think it's a huge mistake to go into an adaptation of a generation's old work expecting the same aesthetic beats to be dutifully carried over from the original. An adaptation should be, in my opinion, conversational with the original, not subservient to it. This is a movie, it's not a shrine. Art wants to speak to the day it was made in. That doesn't mean that we can't get anything from art that was made in the past, obviously, but I think it's a mistake to directly compare Mary Shelley's time to our own. They have similarities, but they are not the same. An industrial revolution is a lot different from an industrial upheaval or reorganization or collapse. Like whatever it is we're going through right now, I have a really hard time thinking about it as a revolution. I don't see a whole lot of new things being created. I just see the same exploitation and extraction and horror trying to claim that the next step is turning into God and creating life. This is also why I just completely disagree with Atun-Shei's criticism that Oscar Isaac is too old to play Victor Frankenstein. I'm so sorry. I love you so much.
Victor Frankenstein just kind of must be this precocious young scientist. I just don't think that it's like, I just think there's something fundamentally lost about the character when he is played by an older actor.
We live in a time where the people who have announced themselves the stewards of scientific and social progress are degenerate little freaks deep into adulthood who have not matured past adolescence in any way but physical. They have abandoned responsibility, not only to society, but to their own creations. And because the things we create also create us, they've also abandoned responsibility to themselves. Literally this week, Elon Musk posted in apparent pride a video he asked Grok to make him where the prompt was, "She smiles and says, I'll always love you."
I will always love you.
Is that not the saddest shit you've ever seen in your life? So no, I do not think it's appropriate to make a Victor Frankenstein meant to speak to a contemporary audience the small-time science kid dicking around in his basement that he was in the book. That's not where our hubris is coming from right now. So yeah, I liked Frankenstein. And that doesn't mean you have to like it or you're bad or wrong if you don't. But if you don't, I want to hear some actual reasons why, instead of just sentences shaped like reasons. Especially you, Atun-Shei. You're better than this.